Look at it, a lonely tower against a raging storm. For centuries, we've seen them as symbols of hope, beacons of safety, cutting through the darkness to guide sailors home. There's a romance to the lighthouse, a stoic beauty in its solitude. But what happens when that solitude curdles? When the comforting quiet becomes a screaming silence? What happens when the light meant to save others can't save the keepers trapped within? The truth is, these isolated pillars are the perfect stage for the darkest parts of the human mind to play out. Tonight, we're not talking about romance. We're talking about reality. We are going to explore 3 disturbing, true stories from the edge of the world, where the only witness was the unforgiving sea. The life of a lighthouse keeper was one of relentless routine and profound isolation. You were a servant to the light. Every single day, you would haul oil, trim the wicks, polish the enormous Fresnel lens until it shone like a diamond. And all the while, the wind and the waves were your only companions. It was a job that attracted a certain kind of person: solitary, resilient, steady. But even the steadiest mind can be worn down by the constant, grinding loneliness and the sheer power of nature. The stories we're about to delve into are not just ghost tales whispered by sailors. They are documented accounts of madness, death, and baffling disappearance. They are true lighthouse horror stories etched into maritime history. Our first story takes us to the coast of Wales, to a treacherous reef known as the Smalls. It's a tale that so profoundly shocked the authorities, it changed the rules of lighthouse keeping forever. This is a terrifying case study in isolated psychological horror. The year is 1801. The Smalls Lighthouse is little more than a wooden hut perched on stilts, constantly battered by the Irish Sea. 2 men are assigned to man it: Thomas Howell and Thomas Griffith. Right away, there was a problem. The 2 men hated each other. They were known to argue constantly, and the thought of being trapped together in a space no bigger than a small room, miles from shore, was a nightmare for both. They tried to keep their distance, working in sullen silence. But you can't keep your distance in a cage. Then, the inevitable happened. A massive storm rolled in, cutting them off completely from the mainland. Waves crashed over the top of the structure, making it groan and shudder. For weeks, this was their world: the roaring wind and the venomous silence between them. Then, one day, Thomas Griffith had an accident. Accounts differ. Some say he fell ill, others that he was injured on the slippery gangway. Whatever the cause, his condition worsened rapidly. Thomas Howell found himself in a terrifying predicament. He tried to nurse his partner, to signal for help, but the storm was relentless. Soon, Griffith died. Imagine Howell's panic. He's trapped in a tiny hut with a dead body, and the man he was known to despise is the one who's dead. When a rescue boat finally arrives, who are they going to believe? He would be accused of murder. He was certain of it. So, driven by fear and desperation, he decided he couldn't just bury the body at sea. He needed proof of what happened. He built a makeshift coffin out of wooden planks and placed Griffith's body inside. But he couldn't keep it in the cramped living quarters. The only place to put it was outside, on the narrow gallery, lashed to the railings. The storm continued to rage, and Howell began to lose his mind. The wind tore at the cheap coffin, ripping away some of the planks. One of Griffith's arms was thrown free, and the wind caused it to move. From inside, looking through the salt-crusted window, Howell saw a horrifying sight. The arm of his dead partner seemed to be waving at him, beckoning, tapping against the glass with every gust of wind. Tap, tap, tap. For weeks, he endured this. The corpse, the storm, and the tapping. When the relief crew finally reached the lighthouse, they found a man who was barely human. Thomas Howell was raving, his mind shattered by the ordeal. The story was so horrific that the British Lighthouse Authority, Trinity House, immediately changed its policy. From that day forward, no lighthouse would be manned by fewer than 3 keepers at a time. A rule created not just for efficiency, but to provide a witness and to hopefully keep the crushing loneliness at bay. Sometimes, the horror wasn't born from an accident, but was brought from the shore. Our next story comes from the United States, from the coast of Maine, and the Seguin Island Lighthouse. It's a tale of how a simple gift, meant to bring joy, became an instrument of torment. In the mid-1800s, a new lighthouse keeper was assigned to the remote Seguin Island. He was a newlywed, and he brought his young wife with him to their new, isolated home. He loved her dearly and worried about the loneliness she would face during the long, harsh Maine winters. So, before they left the mainland, he bought her a beautiful gift, a piano. He imagined it would fill their small stone house with music and culture, a beautiful sound to push back against the howling wind and the crashing surf. His wife was overjoyed. There was just one problem. In their haste, she had only brought a single piece of sheet music with her. At first, it was fine. She would play the song, and it was lovely. But as the days turned into weeks, and the winter ice locked them away from the world, the music began to change. She played the same song, over and over and over. The same notes, the same melody, every single day. For the keeper, the sound that was once a comfort became a maddening, inescapable loop. He'd hear it while he was tending the light. He'd hear it while trying to eat. He'd hear it in his sleep. The repetitive tune began to chip away at his sanity, a constant, grating reminder of their inescapable confinement. One day, he couldn't take it anymore. In a fit of rage, he grabbed an axe. He stormed into the room where his wife was playing and smashed the piano to splinters. Then, in his madness, he turned the axe on her before taking his own life. It's a brutal, tragic story of love destroyed by isolation. But the story doesn't end there. For over 100 years since, subsequent keepers and visitors to the Seguin Island Lighthouse have reported a strange, chilling phenomenon. On quiet nights, when the wind is just right, they say you can hear the faint, ghostly sound of a piano playing. The same, simple tune, drifting out of the empty keeper's house and into the fog. 3 keepers is the rule, a safeguard against madness, and a buffer against tragedy. But what happens when 3 is not enough? What happens when 3 seasoned keepers, on a remote rock in the North Atlantic, simply vanish? This final story is perhaps the most famous and chilling of them all. It's not just a story of potential horror, but one of the great unexplained maritime mysteries of the 20th century. This is the story of the Flannan Isles Lighthouse. December 1900. Eilean Moor, or the Big Isle, is a lonely, windswept rock in the Outer Hebrides of Scotland. It was a place steeped in strange folklore, a place local shepherds avoided, believing it to be haunted by spirits. On this rock stood a brand new lighthouse, manned by 3 men, Thomas Marshall, James Duckett, and Donald MacArthur. On December 15th, a passing steamer, the Archer, noted in its log that the Flannan Light was not operational, a serious breach of protocol. The report was passed on, but due to severe storms, the scheduled relief vessel, the Hesperus, couldn't make its journey until December 26th. As the Hesperus approached the island, Captain Jim Harvey felt a growing sense of dread. The customary flag was not flying on the flagpole. No one came out to greet them on the landing stage. He blew the ship's whistle and fired a flare. There was no response, only the sound of the wind and the screeching of gulls. A small boat was sent ashore with a relief keeper named Joseph Moore. What he found has baffled investigators for over 120 years. Moore climbed the steep steps to the lighthouse entrance and found the main door was unlocked. Inside, in the kitchen, a fire that had long since gone out was in the grate. There was a half-eaten meal of salted mutton and pickles still on the table, and a single chair was knocked over, as if someone had risen from their meal in a great hurry. The keepers' beds were unmade, and the clocks had all stopped. Moore went up to the lantern room. Everything was in perfect order. The lamps were trimmed and filled with oil, ready for the next lighting. This wasn't a case of neglect. Something had interrupted the keeper's routine, suddenly and decisively. Back downstairs, he noticed something else that was deeply unsettling. Of the 3 sets of heavy, waterproof oilskins the keepers used, 2 were gone. One, belonging to Donald MacArthur, was still hanging on its peg. This meant one of the keepers had gone out into a raging North Atlantic storm without his protective gear. It was unthinkable. A professional keeper would never do that. The last entry in the lighthouse log was for 9 a.m. on December 15th. The entries from the days prior were strange. Thomas Marshall, the principal keeper, wrote of a severe storm the likes of which he'd never seen. He wrote that James Duckett had been very quiet, and that Donald MacArthur, a tough, seasoned mariner, had been crying. Why would a massive storm cause an experienced keeper to weep? And why was there no report of such a storm in the surrounding area at that time? So, what happened to them? The official explanation concluded that the men were swept away by a freak wave. The theory goes that a storm had damaged a supply crate on the western landing. 2 of the men, Marshall and Duckett, went down to secure it. When they didn't return, MacArthur, perhaps in a panic, ran out to help them, explaining why he left his oilskins behind, only for all 3 to be washed into the sea by a monstrous, unexpected wave. Evidence of wave damage high up on the cliff supported this, but it doesn't explain everything. It doesn't explain the eerie log entries about the dreadful storm that no one else saw, or MacArthur weeping. It doesn't explain the overturned chair or the uneaten meal. Other theories abound. Did MacArthur, known for a fiery temper, snap and murder the other 2 before throwing himself into the sea? Did they encounter something supernatural on the haunted isle? Were they taken by a foreign vessel? We will never know. The 3 men, Thomas Marshall, James Duckett, and Donald MacArthur, were never seen again. Their bodies were never recovered. All they left behind was an unlocked door, an uneaten meal, and an eternal, silent mystery. From the psychological torment in Wales, to the maddening music in Maine, to the absolute void of answers in Scotland, these lighthouses, built to be pillars of certainty in a chaotic world, became the settings for humanity's deepest fears: madness, violence, and the great, terrifying unknown. They remind us that for all our engineering and for all our bravery, we are incredibly small and fragile things when faced with true, unrelenting isolation and the raw power of the ocean. What do you think happened on the Flannan Isles? Was it a freak wave, a moment of madness, or something else entirely? Let me know your theories in the comments below. If you found these stories as chilling and fascinating as I did, please give this video a like and subscribe to the channel for more explorations into the dark and the mysterious. Don't forget to hit that notification bell so you don't miss our next journey. Thank you for watching. Stay safe and always be wary of the quiet places.